Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to be positive, the emptier you feel inside? There's a truth about Eckhart Tolle that the New Age industry doesn't want you to discover, a truth so unsettling they've preferred to twist it into motivational phrases printed on pillows and mugs. But today, you're going to uncover what it really means to disappear. And no, it's not about positive thinking. I spent years immersed in the world of commercial spirituality. I bought all the books, attended all the workshops, repeated all the positive affirmations promising to transform my life. Guess what happened? Nothing. Or rather, something did happen. I became addicted to forced optimism, a spiritual beggar always chasing the next technique, the next spiritual guide, the next revelation that would finally make me feel complete. Until the day I found Tolle's original writings, not the sugar-coated versions sold in self-help courses, the raw texts, unfiltered, no marketing. And what I discovered shocked me. Tolle never talked about positive thinking. Never. He talked about something far more radical, something that would send any motivational coach running. He talked about completely disappearing. Imagine for a second that you discovered everything you believed about personal growth was wrong, that this entire quest to be better, to think better, to feel better, was exactly what kept you trapped. How would you feel? Because that's the truth Tolle brought to the world, and it's been carefully distorted by an industry that needs to keep you searching to keep selling. The New Age took humanity's deepest teachings and turned them into spiritual fast food. They took Tolle's revolutionary idea of the self's disappearance and transformed it into manifest your dreams and attract abundance. But Tolle's real teaching isn't about attracting anything. It's about losing everything, especially the illusion that you are someone who needs something. Have you noticed how modern spirituality always promises you more? More peace, more love, more abundance, more purpose, as if you were an empty vessel that needs filling. Tolle said the exact opposite. He said you need to empty the vessel, shatter the vessel, discover that there never was a vessel at all. Does that scare you? It should scare you, because it means everything you thought you were might just be a carefully constructed illusion. Let me tell you a story that changed my perspective forever. It was an ordinary afternoon when I found an unearthed Tolle lecture, unedited, uncommercialized, just him speaking directly without intermediaries. And one of the first things he said was, "The spiritual search is the problem, not the solution." Stop for a second. Read that again. The spiritual search is the problem. At that moment, it felt like someone had pulled the rug out from under my feet. All those years seeking spiritual growth, and he was telling me that the very search was what kept me away from what I was looking for. How is that possible? Because as long as you're searching, there's someone doing the searching. As long as there's someone searching, there's separation. As long as there's separation, there's suffering. The New Age turned this into, keep searching but search positively, as if the problem were the tone of the search, not the search itself. But Tolle went deeper. He realized that the seeker himself was an illusion, that there's no one inside to be improved, healed, or enlightened. There's only life happening, consciousness manifesting, but no separate self experiencing it. Can you feel how different this is from everything commercial spirituality teaches? While they sell you the idea that you are special, unique, destined for greatness, Tolle whispers the most liberating and terrifying truth of all. You don't exist. Not in the way you think you exist. What you call self is just a collection of thoughts, memories, and sensations arising and disappearing in consciousness, like clouds in the sky. The sky remains untouched, but you identify with the clouds. The New Age teaches you to improve the clouds, make them prettier, more positive, more luminous. Tolle invites you to realize that you are the sky, but realizing that means that all the clouds you thought were you simply disappear, or rather, you realize they were never really there. This isn't comforting. It's not motivational. It won't appear in any inspirational Instagram post. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time, because it means that all your problems, all your searches, all your personal dramas are happening for no one. They're just movements in consciousness like waves in the ocean. The ocean doesn't identify with the waves. It simply allows them to arise and disappear, without resistance, without attachment, without personal history. Are you starting to understand why the New Age had to distort this? Because if people really understood Tolle's teaching, They would stop buying courses, books, crystals, alternative therapies, and all the products of the spiritual industry. They would simply stop searching, and a billion-dollar industry would collapse. So they did what they always do. They took the revolutionary essence and transformed it into something palatable, something that kept people searching but feeling good about it. They transformed disappear into be positive. They transformed you don't exist into you are special. They transformed stop searching into search in alignment. And the most tragic part, most people who follow Tolle today have no idea what he really taught. They repeat phrases about presence and mindfulness without understanding that Tolle was talking about the complete dissolution of the personal identity. He was talking about dying psychologically, not metaphorically, literally. The death of everything you think you are. Do you feel the weight of that? Because I remember the exact moment it hit me. I was reading The Power of Now for the third time when I finally realized he wasn't teaching me to improve my life. He was showing me that there was no life to be improved. There was no mine, just life, happening, by itself. At that moment, something inside me died, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Because as long as there's someone trying to live, life can't flow freely. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away. But when you open your hands completely, the water simply flows. The New Age teaches techniques for holding onto water more efficiently. Eckhart Tolle whispers, "Open your hands." And when you open your hands, you disappear into them. Not in the sense of ceasing to exist, but in the sense of ceasing to exist as something separate from the flow of life. You become the flow, not someone who is flowing. This changes everything, because when you stop being someone who has problems, problems simply lose their place to hold on. When you stop being someone who seeks happiness, happiness stops being something that needs to be sought. When you stop being someone who needs love, love stops being a need and reveals itself as your own nature. But the spiritual industry can't sell you this, because this isn't a product. It's the absence of a consumer to buy any product. That's why they had to create a domesticated version of Tolle's teachings, a version that keeps you as a consumer, but feeling spiritually evolved. They sold you the illusion that you can remain you and still be enlightened, that you can maintain your personal identity and transcend it at the same time. As if it were possible to keep the cage and still fly free. But Tolle knew this was impossible. He knew the cage and the prisoner were the same thing, that there's no one trapped in an identity. There's only identification happening, and identification can simply stop. Not through effort, not through practice, not through years of meditation, simply through the clear recognition that there was never anyone there identifying. That's what Tolle really taught, and that's what the New Age doesn't want you to discover. Because the moment you truly see this, you stop being a seeker, you stop being a spiritual consumer, you stop being someone who needs a guru, a technique, a method. You simply disappear into what you always were. And when that happens, the entire industry of spiritual seeking becomes irrelevant to you. That's why it fights so hard to keep you seeking. But what if you stopped? What if you really listened to what Tolle was trying to tell you behind all the sugary interpretations? What if you had the courage to disappear? Let me show you how this really happens. Not through pretty concepts or abstract philosophy, but through the direct experience of what Tolle actually discovered. First, you need to understand something that goes against everything you've been taught about personal growth. You can't practice disappearing. Because as long as there's someone practicing, disappearing is impossible. It's like trying to sleep through effort. The more you try, the more awake you become. So how did Tolle get to this? He stopped trying to get there. I'll tell you exactly what happened to him on that night that changed everything. Not the romanticized version that circulates in the books, but what really happened. Tolle was at rock bottom, deep depression, suicidal thoughts, a complete mental collapse. He described feeling like he was carrying a giant stone on his chest. Every breath was an effort, every thought was a stab. And then, in that dark room in London, at 29 years old, something inside him said, "I can't live with myself anymore." But then a question arose out of nowhere. If I can't live with myself, who is the I and who is the myself? Are they two or one? In that moment of absolute despair, something extraordinary happened. He stopped fighting against the suffering, not because he chose to stop, but because there was no more energy to fight. It was as if he had completely surrendered to his own destruction, like a wounded animal that stops struggling and simply gives in. And it was in this total surrender that he discovered something that would change his life forever. He realized that there was someone observing all that suffering. Someone who remained untouched, no matter how intense the mental chaos. It wasn't a person observing, but it was pure consciousness, formless, without history, without problems. And in that moment, Tolle realized that he wasn't the person suffering. He was this consciousness observing the suffering happen. The person he thought he was simply disappeared, not gradually, instantaneously, like a drop of water dissolving in the ocean. The drop ceases to exist, but nothing is lost. Only the illusion of separation disappears. This is what Tolle called awakening, not a special state to be achieved, but the recognition of what has always been here. You have always been this consciousness. You were never the person you thought you were. But how can you have this experience without going through a devastating existential crisis like Tolle went through? Here's the secret that the New Age never told you. You don't need to go through extreme suffering. You just need to stop avoiding it when it shows up. Because all suffering is an invitation to disappearance. It's life showing you that the person you think you are isn't real enough to deal with what's happening. The next time you feel anxiety, sadness, anger, or fear, don't try to change it. Don't try to be positive. Don't try to transform it. Just ask yourself, who is feeling this? And then observe. You'll discover something surprising that there's no one feeling. There are just feelings arising in consciousness, like clouds arising in the sky. The sky doesn't get anxious when storm clouds appear. It simply allows them to pass. You are that sky. You always have been. But the mind created a story that you are a specific cloud with a specific shape, with specific problems. And every time other clouds appear, different emotions, different situations, you think they're going to destroy you, because you forgot that you are the space where all the clouds appear and disappear. Tolle discovered this in the most dramatic way possible, but you can discover it right now. Stop reading for a second, close your eyes, and just observe what's here. Don't try to feel anything special. Don't try to achieve any state. Just observe what is already present. Do you notice? There's something observing all the thoughts, all the sensations, all the emotions. Something that has never been touched by any experience. Observe more closely. This observer. Where is it? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have an age? Does it have a gender? You'll discover something surprising. The observer has no characteristics. It's just pure presence. Awareness without an object. And here's what most people miss. This observer is no different from you. It's not something you possess. You are this. Your whole life you thought you were the content of consciousness, the thoughts, the emotions, the sensations, the memories. But you were always the space where all that content appears. It's like discovering you spent your whole life identifying with the furniture in the house, when in reality, you were always the house itself. The furniture can change, be rearranged. Some pieces might break. Others might be replaced, but the house remains the same. That's you, the real you, not the story you tell about yourself, not the personality you developed, not the problems you carry, just this conscious presence that's here now. And when you clearly recognize this, something magical happens. All personal problems don't disappear. They simply lose the person they're happening to. It's as if you discovered you spent your whole life thinking you were a character in a movie, when you were always the screen where the movie happens. The character might go through terrible dramas, but the screen remains untouched. The New Age teaches you to improve the character, make it more positive and more enlightened, more evolved. It sells you courses on raising your vibration, attracting abundance, manifesting your dreams. But notice the contradiction. All these teachings assume there's someone who needs to be improved, someone who's vibrating low, someone who lacks abundance, someone separated from their dreams. They strengthen the very illusion that causes suffering, the belief that you are a separate person who needs to achieve something to be complete. It's like trying to cure thirst by drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. Eckhart Tolle shows you that you are the screen. And here's the revolutionary difference. The screen never needs improvement. It's perfect exactly as it is. Terrible dramas might unfold in the movie, but the screen is never damaged. Romantic comedies might be projected onto it, but the screen doesn't fall in love. Horror movies might scare the audience, but the screen remains in absolute peace. The New Age tries to improve the movie. Eckhart Tolle points to the screen, and when you see this clearly, the character can continue to exist, but you no longer identify with it. It becomes just a function, like breathing or digesting. It happens by itself, without you needing to worry or strive. This changes everything in your life experience, because when you stop being a person having experiences, you become the experience itself happening. When you stop being someone who loves, you become love itself. When you stop being someone who's alive, you become life itself. And that's not a pretty metaphor, it's literal. Let me give you a practical example of how this works in everyday life. Imagine you're going through a difficult relationship. The traditional approach would be, I need to fix this. I need to communicate better. I need to change my partner or change myself. Always an I at the center, trying to control, manipulate, improve. But let's go deeper. Notice how this person who wants to solve is always tense, always calculating, always afraid of the next conflict, living in the future, planning conversations that may never happen. When you disappear, what happens is completely different. First, you stop carrying the relationship as a personal burden. Stop making it an extension of your ego. The relationship simply flows, without a center, without a controller, without an agenda. You listen without preparing responses. You speak without a mental script. You feel without needing to justify or correct. You act when action is necessary, speak when words are necessary, remain silent when silence is necessary. But here's the most impressive part. You discover you knew exactly what to do all along. The person who was striving so hard was actually the obstacle to natural wisdom. It's like when you're driving and suddenly realize you've reached your destination without remembering the journey. Your body knew exactly how to drive, turn, stop, without the I interfering every second. But there's no one deciding this. It's as if the intelligence of life takes over completely. And the most surprising thing, everything flows much more harmoniously than when you were trying to control, because life knows how to live itself. It has been doing so for billions of years without needing your help. You're like a passenger who got up and tried to pilot the plane, creating unnecessary turbulence. When you disappear, you return to your seat and let the pilot handle the flight. But here's the most beautiful paradox of all. When you disappear as a passenger, you discover you were always the pilot. Not you as a person, but you as consciousness, as life. As universal intelligence manifesting itself through this specific form, the person was just a character that this intelligence was portraying, and when the character disappears, the intelligence can express itself freely. That's what Eckhart Tolle meant when he talked about awakening, not waking up to something new, but waking up from the dream of being a separate person. And when you wake up from that dream, you realize you were never really asleep. It was just a game that consciousness was playing with itself, a cosmic game of hide and seek, where it hides from itself by identifying with temporary forms, and then finds itself by recognizing its true nature. You are in this process of finding yourself right now. Every moment of suffering is an invitation to stop hiding. Every moment of seeking is an invitation to recognize that you already are what you seek. Every moment of feeling lost is an invitation to realize that there was never anyone to get lost. The New Age has turned this into a complex journey with stages, levels, gradations, as if it were a spiritual university where you need to study to graduate in enlightenment. But Eckhart Tolle knew this was absurd. You can't study to be what you already are. It's like trying to learn to be yourself. Impossible, because you never stopped being. The only thing that happens is that you stop pretending to be something else, and this stopping pretending is not a process. It's an instantaneous recognition, like when you were looking for the glasses that were on your head the whole time. When someone points it out, you don't need to take a course to recognize that they were always there. You simply see, and when you see who you really are, everything the New Age promises happens naturally, but not for a person. It simply happens. Peace is no longer something you seek, it's what you are. Love is no longer something you want, it's what flows through you. Happiness is no longer a goal, it's the natural fragrance of your existence. But there's no one possessing these qualities, they simply are. Like the sun doesn't possess light, It is light. You don't possess consciousness. You are consciousness. And when that becomes clear, the spiritual search ends. Not because you found what you were looking for, but because you realized there was never anyone looking. This is terrifying to the ego, because it means the death of everything it believed to be real, but it's the greatest liberation possible, because it means you were never trapped. There never was a prison, only the illusion of someone imprisoned, and when the illusion dissolves, what remains is absolute freedom, not the freedom of a person, but the freedom of life itself expressing itself without obstacles. Eckhart Tolle saw this, lived this, and tried to share it in the simplest way possible, but an entire industry built sandcastles on top of that simplicity. Now you know the truth. The question that remains is, do you have the courage to be simple enough to see it? Because seeing this doesn't require any special knowledge, no advanced techniques, no elaborate preparation. It only requires the courage to stop being someone for a moment and discover what remains when all identity disappears. What remains is what you always were. What remains is what Tolle called your true self. But even that name is provisional, because when you find your true self, you discover there is no self to be found. There is only this, here, now, pure being, without an owner, pure consciousness, without a center, pure life, without a story. But let me be even more specific about what this means in practice. When Tolle talks about disappearing, he's not talking about becoming a spiritual vegetable. It's not about losing the ability to function in the world. It's about discovering that you can function perfectly without carrying the psychological weight of being someone. Imagine what it would be like to live without the constant internal narrative about who you are, what you need, what should happen, what went wrong in the past and what might go wrong in the future. Imagine the lightness of simply responding to life moment to moment, without mental filters, without hidden agendas, without the need to maintain a consistent image of yourself. This isn't a fantasy. It's how Tolle has lived for decades. It's how anyone can live when they stop pretending to be a person, and in that total disappearance, you finally find yourself, not as something, but as nothing that is everything, not as someone, but as no one who is everyone, not as a special person who achieved enlightenment, but as the light itself that never needed to be achieved. This is the forbidden knowledge that Tolle brought to the world, and that the New Age transformed into spiritual self-help to keep its customers. But now you know. The question is, will you continue to be a customer? Or will you have the courage to disappear into what you always were? The choice is yours. But remember, even the person who chooses is not you. You are the space where all choices appear and disappear, including the choice to discover this.